doing that. I kind of like that now.
Yeah, me too. How's your week been, Jenny? Beautiful sunny Queen.
I've had a really good week, actually. I've had it's been a crazy week, really busy with work, but busy in a really good way, not that kind of, oh, I'm busy. But we've just had a really great week. And I posted yesterday on a page saying, you know, you've had a good week when you speak to your accountant and the accountant goes, wow, you've had a really good couple of months, haven't you? So when your accountant tells you that, you're like, I'm doing okay. No, so we've just had a really good week. I just finished off a couple of big contracts with some beautiful companies I've been working with, and I've started a new one, helping them build their Indigenous employment program and employment strategy. So I'm very excited about that. So lots of fun things happening towards the end of the year. And how about you? You've had a crazy week. You are so busy at the moment.
I am, but I'm really enjoying your coaching, Jenny, all about the goal setting. It's making me think about where I was at the beginning of the year and what my goals were for this year, what I achieved, what I'm planning on for next year, and that's a really exciting time. So
it's one of my favorite times of the year, goal setting.
Yeah, I'm
all the time, really.
And I really love how you chunked it down to what about just for 4 months? You know, what do you want to goal set for those 4 months? Not trying to look at a massive big year. But I also love when you then went 10 years, 5 years, etc., because I'm definitely not much of a future looker.
And to be honest, Kylie, I'm not either. And that's why I actually have to train myself to do that. So I'm often doing that. And Michael and I have that conversation. My partner and I have that conversation quite regularly, because we're saying, you know, our life changed a couple of years ago. And now we're sort of saying, well, what do we want to look like in 5 years? What do we want to be in 10 years' time? And how is that going to change? And if we don't start thinking about that now, how can we plan for that? How can we even, you know, think about what it's going to look like, or even start the kind of baby steps that we need to reach it? So I think I force myself to do it in my personal life, and that obviously relates to my business, because my business is what I do. You know, it is who I am at the moment, which I'm actually loving a lot of.
That's so interesting. So maybe I'm the only person in the entire world that has never, ever had a discussion with my partner and said, where would we like to be in what would we like to be doing in 5 years' time? That's the
I don't think you're probably the only one, but it's not something that often people do. And I think, but it's a really interesting conversation, because I've found when people have that conversation, you know, whether it's just in the next 3 years, what if this happened? Like, I imagine, you know, 3 years ago, about 3 years ago now, the amazing Mars joined our family here in Brisbane and lived with us, and that completely changed my world. Now, we didn't talk about that happening; that just happened. But since then, it's actually invited us to say, well, what do we want our life to look like? What do we want our family's life to look like? And how is that going to change now in the next 5 years? You know, Mars will be 18. What happens then? Well, our life will change again. What do we want to do then? And I think when we have that kind of life change, I mean, you would have done that a long time ago in a different format with Rich, but it's changed now. And I think sometimes we forget to sort of take stock and go, we have control over so much of our life. And the sooner we start recognizing how much we have control and influence over, the more we can actually manage in the future.
Beautiful, Jenny. And there's that little quote that says, life is not about what happens to you or something. It's what I can't remember how it goes, but anyway, it's a great quote.
Not what you do, not what happens to you.
Yes, I love that. So I think so often we just float along.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I was floating along for 35 years of my life, almost 40 years of my life before I started the company. I was literally floating. And I had this conversation with someone this week. So I said, how did you come into business? And I was like, so really, like, it just happened. It wasn't a planned thing, because I realized I woke up from coasting. I kind of woke up and went, hang on, I'm no longer driving this bus anymore. And this is not the direction I want to go. And when you start to actually realize that you want to get out of like the passenger seat and become the driver, it does change. For me, it completely changed my outlook. One of my beautiful colleagues that I connected with through a previous life said, be the thermostat, not the thermometer. And that just resonated with me so much. So be the one that sets the temperature in your life, and not just responds to other people's temperatures. And that to me just completely changed my world when I heard that sort of 7 years ago or 5 years ago, and went, that's what I want to be.
That's a cool one, but I prefer your original one, which is about being the bus driver.
Yeah.
I really like that. Are you driving your own bus, or are you
Yeah.
a passenger being told when to get on and off?
And so often we do that in all aspects of our life. And I guess for me, particularly in the business, a lot of it's about choice, really, isn't it? I mean, we make choice about how we want to work every day. And the biggest choice I made was when I realized who I wanted within my community, within my space, and being really mindful and really protective about the people who are in my space. And so, there's a bunch of people who I absolutely trust implicitly, who I would, ask all the hard questions that I need answered to help me go through that. And I'm really comfortable with that. Because before, I used to be really, anybody could give me advice and I'd be like, oh my God, maybe I should take that advice. And I was like, what is this? We need to be really mindful about, that conversation we have and who controls our thoughts and our engagement. And so that's been a real big part of my life the last couple of years, particularly in the business, and hopefully my clients do. So.
Totally. And who are you spending time with? Because they're the ones that are having a lot of influence over you, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
And whether they're positive or negative, et cetera, and the way that they look at life. So very important. And making sure that when you're choosing mentors, when you're choosing coaches, et cetera, when you're working with other people, when you're talking with colleagues, when you're attending networking events, who is it that you're choosing to spend your time with?
Exactly. And I think we forget that, particularly, I mean, as a coach, it's different because I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, as do you, a lot of group coaching. So we're spending a lot of time with the same sort of people. And so we want to make sure that people are getting value from each other, not just what I can share and what they can share with me, but and I guess it's that topic that we're talking about today is leading to that without even thinking about it, that community that we're creating. What are we trying to do with our time and our space, and how do we build that community, and how is that impacting who we have? You and I have been in so many programs that have various types of communities, right? So some of them are very positive, very engaging, very kind of warm hug communities. And then there are others that are very kind of structured, very strong, very kind of, you need to kind of do all this work and be this particular type of person, type of communities. And so there's so many different ways that you can create that space. For me, I choose to have a community that says, this is about you showing up in the best version of yourself, whatever that looks like. If you want to make $1 a week, that is amazing. I will help you make $1 a week. If you want to make $1 million a year, then we can help you do that too. So it's really about making a choice about where you want to sit, and then finding people who are going to help you, keep you on track and keep you in the, refocus you, or change the GPS when your bus goes off the rails.
I love it. I totally love it. So today we're going to be talking about community guidelines across the social channels, etc. But we've changed that one, and we're going with instead building a community to grow your business, because we've been talking about how vital it is that you have the people around you that help you achieve those goals, etc. So we're looking back community guidelines next week or the week after instead. But today it's really important, particularly as we come to the end of the year and we look at how has this year been? Have we surrounded ourselves with the people that we need to help us grow our business? Not even just grow, to help us keep us where we need to be in business, keep us on track, keep us positive, keep us focused, keep us moving in the direction that we want to go in. So Jenni, chat with me about first of all, who's an important part in your community? Obviously, there's your beautiful team, but I'm imagining even your partner and your child are a very big, important part of your community to keep you going where you want to go.
And I love that you've brought that up, because we so often think of community from an external perspective, don't we? What is the community that I'm creating? The people who are following me, that kind of leadership, followership model. For me, very much, it's my family. It's my partner. I couldn't do this without the support of Michael. And that's, I'm not just saying that. It's honestly true. Why he's my confidant, even if he doesn't really get what I'm talking about. And when he talks to me about machine operating, I don't know what he's talking about, but it's the opportunity to share and listen and just reflect. So really, he is, obviously my number one support. But really it's about the people who I then also talk to and have those sidebar conversations, the old school water cooler conversations. They're the ones that actually I get greatest value out of in my business. So whether it's colleagues that I'm working with, some of my client colleagues, actually, some of the people that I've met through the organizations I'm supporting, some of those conversations that I have have become some of my most richest and best conversations. But really, as I said, there's about half a dozen people, obviously Fridays with you and every other time we talk. But there's 6 people probably that I would say off the top of my head who are my confidant, my community, that actually keep the wheels turning for both myself and the company. And I'm really comfortable with that. I don't need a huge posse and an empire and a large group of people. It's really about being okay with the advice that you're getting and then popping my head up sometimes when I go, oh, this is outside the scope of my brain's trust. Where else can I go? And how about you?
I'm 100% with you as well. I know for a fact if I couldn't do what I do without the support of my family, particularly my daughter who cooks a large amount of the meals and our family, etc. So I can be working till 7 if I need to, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Obviously in my family we've got a bit of a different scenario. We've got carers for my husband, etc. So without him having them doing what they need to do and all of that too. So I'm very lucky with that personal community that I have.
Yeah.
And in terms of business, yes, I've got my team who are a great community for me. I can bounce ideas around. We can make sure things happen. We can keep each other on track. But we can also, just let things go when it feels like that's not the right direction for that anymore, or quickly let's change that up. And, we're very good at adapting really, really quickly and making things happen or evolve, for example.
Yeah.
In terms of mentors and coaches, like obviously the work that I do with you where we coach each other is just magic and gold. Yep. And I think, I clearly feel incredibly blessed to have that.
Me too.
And, yeah, I also feel that from time to time, I'll look around and think, where am I lacking at the moment? Where am I wanting to head? What's a little gap in my offerings or in my knowledge base that I want to go down? And then I'll start exploring for a little while and see if there's someone out there that resonates with me for that. Yeah. But it's not always an easy thing to come by. And, you and I have both invested ginormous amounts of money where it hasn't actually felt like the right thing necessarily at times. It hasn't been the right fit. But there's always something to be gained out of whatever experience that you have. I remember one time you and I were doing some courses through some coaching, and we realized this is actually gold because we know for sure this is how we don't want to present our content to our paying clients, for example, and that was a really important message for us to learn as well.
100%.
Learning what not to do is just as important, or if not more important, than learning what to do.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting finding the right community for you, and who's that made up of? For some people, it might literally just be 1 or 2 people that you surround yourself with. It might be that you just have one coach, and that's perfect. That's all that you need to keep you going. But what do you think would be, Jenni, then your next port of call? Would it be Facebook groups for you? Would it be being on LinkedIn? What would it be for you that's your next level down in terms of a community? It's
a really interesting question. And since and I've been thinking about this for a while, just given the conversation we're going to talk about with Facebook groups. And it makes me actually wonder about this whole community conversation. So this is where I always struggle here. Because for me, and we talk about, and the social media model, the kind of engagement model is to get that 1,000 raving fans or whatever number of fans that you want to be there, to know, like, and trust you, be there and support everything you do and create that groundswell, so that you get this kind of community of people who come and work with you. What I've actually found, though, is that people, when they come to me, they don't actually come to me for community. They come to me for advice or for support or for mentorship to actually help them build their community and build their engagement. But being part of a community in my community isn't actually why people work with me. And that's been really interesting for me to observe, particularly over the last 6 months. I've been really thinking about this, going, how do I build this community? And I kind of feel like sometimes I'm not supposed to build a community for others to come. it's more about building confidence and comfortability and connection with themselves so that they have that confidence and they then know what their community and what they need to thrive. Now, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's really been a real challenging for me, a conversation, but what I have done is I have a LinkedIn group, a LinkedIn community in terms of the people that I engage with on LinkedIn through my posts, but probably Facebook is the one that I'm being kind of the most consistent in the People Purpose Profit meetup group, or the group that we have now on Facebook. And our focus is really on the Facebook group more so than the meetups with COVID and people kind of getting, zoomed out at night and not wanting so many evening meetups. We've really focused on engagement in our Facebook group. So that's probably the next level, but it's really made me think about, what does my community look like, and what is community to me in terms of the business and also myself.
Super interesting, isn't it? And how we evolve that stuff over time. So, for example, with our group coaching level of our program offerings, we have we had many Facebook groups just for those group coaching groups. So, we're a maximum of supposed to be 8, but sometimes it stretches to 10 that are in those Facebook groups. So we'd have a group per group. It was too much, from our perspective anyway. But also we've got a messenger group to remind them of their Zoom link. We've got the Facebook group where we put the recordings and blah blah blah. It's like, whoa, if it's too much for me, imagining it's too much for them also. So we pulled it back. We combined it into one Facebook group, and then Messenger, they have separate ones. I cannot tell you what a difference it's made. And in fact, I'm hardly active in that Facebook group at all, because we're active all the time in the Messenger group. And it's amazing. Like, somebody yesterday put up a message saying, talking about one of the other members in the group, saying, I just came up with this idea for you about a video that you could make and put on socials and put on your website, etc. And she was like, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought about it. That's a great idea. I'm going to get onto that. And it was like, wow, it could remove me completely. And they are just having this beautiful support thing going on. And I loved it. And I realized, I love Messenger. I love how good it is that we can get these instant little things happening. You can obviously see when people have read it, etc. And people are much more likely to have their notifications on for Messenger than they are for Facebook. So going in, checking the Facebook group, all of that kind of stuff. So for me, definitely Messenger is a great a great thing for creating community.
And now, as you've said that, I think I would probably agree on that. It's such a dynamic and easy tool to respond to. And as you say, it's about having, it's that, not that gratification is the wrong word, but that instant response and instant reply and instant engagement, so that it's the way to kind of validate a little bit that if you need advice, but also to know that you are part of a group if you need to shout out or need to respond to somebody. But it does ask, I'm always interested in this conversation about what community looks like, because when we're all in different coaching programs, we're all in different groups, how many communities are we actually trying to sustain? And is community, is it about creating individual communities, or is it really about us saying that something like Facebook, for example, or even LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram is actually about bringing you into a global community? And so whether you're on your own Facebook page or you're in a group or whatever it is, it's actually this global community that you have access to by being part of it. So less focus maybe on our own community and more about how we get engagement just generally online to elevate our position in the global community. Now, I know that's a bigger ask, because then we're talking, millions of people, but it makes me think about when I go back to the kind of the many years ago, there was an article written around the 1,000 raving fans model, and saying, trying to find 1,000 true fans is really kind of what the goal is, because if you have 1,000 true fans who are everything you release, everything you purchase, everything you sell, everything you offer, they're there to buy straight away. 1,000 is a sustainable number that allows you then to continue to provide new ideas, and those numbers will kind of roll over time into a bit low, a bit above. But that idea of having a number of people that we're connected with as part of a global community, for me, feels more natural than the way that a lot of people do, which is you're part of my community, come into just being part of me. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. I love it. So what do you feel then would be your big one?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I got to tell you, I don't think I know. I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think for me, I mean, there's a space, and I walk this space between Indigenous business and mainstream business, if you like, for a better term. And so sometimes I feel when I'm looking and engaging within the Indigenous economy and the Indigenous communities, sometimes I feel a bit like on the periphery of that community, because I can see everything and I see it and I observe everything, but I also play in the non-Indigenous space so often that I feel like I sit between a bridge of the two. I feel like I can speak either side, and I can move through and in between each. So I think for me, I actually feel I sit in between this, on the edge of the Black economy and the Black Indigenous business space, because that's who I am and that's what I do. But then I've got this kind of mainstream space. I feel like my role is actually about just, I don't know. It's just, I can't even explain the community piece, to be honest. I feel like it really floors me every time, clearly, because normally I'm really easy with words. But yeah, I feel like I'm always just sitting on this observing spot, watching people and kind of herding and moving people into spaces they need to be, rather than worrying about people coming into my community, I think.
I'm fascinated by it, and I'm also really fascinated about the sitting watching and sort of jumping in when you need to, and where you can get advice, etc. But that's a really interesting one, deciding, do I want to create that community for me, or do I want to be able to guide people into different communities? So that's super fascinating. So as you know, I kind of run 2 different communities, well, in a business space. So
Hello, about 10 communities, I'm pretty sure, Kylie, not 2.
True. But my 2 main business ones would be the Hello Media Facebook group that's open to anyone to join. And I've often said, which people find quite shocking, but out of every 10 people that will request to join, I will decline probably 8 or 9. Because if I'm not interested in having 20,000 or 100,000 in the group, if they're not going to be involved and not going to be engaging with it, and what are they really there for? It's amazing how many people request to join and don't even bother answering the questions. So if they're not answering questions, then are they even going to engage in the group? So what's the point of them being there?
Are they even a real person?
I want them to know that it's a safe space that they can come to and they can ask a question like, oh, my Facebook ads manager my last Facebook ad just got banned. What should I do? And then it's not just me that would reply, but obviously my team, but anybody else. And I think it's wonderful. And I'll give you an example. There's a photographer in Sydney that sells her prints online, and she posts in the group all the time. And she put up a post the other day about keywords for naming her images. And I said to her, well, actually, rather than looking at the keyword planners and all that, start researching, what are people typing in? What is me as a potential customer for you? What would I be typing into Google and looking for? And start doing your research organically. And then other people started saying, actually, I would type in this if I was looking. And then I would type in this if I was looking. And I thought, what a magical community. Definitely. That she's getting feedback straight off the bat for people who are her potential customers, and getting support and getting help. And I thought, what I just love that I've just really been a bit of a facilitator creating this community. But of course, a community is only as good as the people that are in it. That is why, for me, it's so important that I only, bring people in that are going to really add value. And also, I'm all, I've talked with you about this before. I always rather that you do an offer rather than a promo. So you talk about how you can help people rather than, hey, this is me. Let me shout out that really loudly. So, there's a whole different vibe going on in that group. And then my other community, which also feels really special to me, is the Positive Passionate Businesswoman group, which anybody can join, any woman or person that identifies as a woman. And that feels like a really good group too. And again, we're very, very strict on who comes in. If you don't answer the questions, then you just immediately decline, which might sound harsh, but we want a community of people that want to be there for a reason. And there's some beautiful support that goes on in there. And then, of course, off that, there's an offshoot, which is the paid membership. So that's a much, much, much smaller community. And that feels like a good space to be as well. So for me, definitely, it's felt really important for me that I build something that I also want to be part of. And maybe, I don't even know this, but maybe it might have been that I couldn't find the community that I wanted to be in. So I decided to build it. But what came up, I was closing a Facebook page down the other day and deleting it, and that has been there for years and years and years and years and years. And up came one of these memories. It was beautiful. It was the first time that I spoke at the Bangalore Businesswomen's Networking Group. And it was a course in person, and I didn't even know they exist till they'd approached me to speak. And it was beautiful. The comments on it were really lovely, and it was just so nice. And then it was at that event that they put, I put up my hand when they said, we need more volunteers to run it. And I was like, yes, I'm in. And of course, that started my journey down that road, which is about 12 years ago now. So that, I think, was my first big realization. I'd been to the odd networking thing before that, but that was my first time where I felt like I'd landed in something really awesome, which was women supporting women in business. So even though my business is not just women, for me, having positive, passionate businesswomen on the side is a really important part of it. I think there's just something so powerful about building each other up. So anyway, the round way to get to the thing I wanted to say, Jenni, but I feel like for you, that's potentially my thing with the women is potentially your thing in the Indigenous space. That feeling like actually there's some, and even today when I said to you, what glorious earrings, and you said, about it being a bit Indigenous business, et cetera, and I feel that that's just something really amazing and unique opportunity that you've got to be able to going down there and mentoring people, et cetera.
And it's interesting. I had this conversation recently. We obviously, there's lots of challenges in the world at the moment, and particularly in the Indigenous space, there's a lot of people feeling a bit uneasy. And there's conversations around treaty. There's conversations about Reconciliation Australia, reconciliation action plans. There's conversations about ESG and free, prior, informed consent, and a whole lot of stuff. And it gets so complicated. And there's so much. For me, I find there's so much noise. So I feel like my role in this is almost like, I guess it's that observer or moderator, if you like, to sort of, I try and wade through all the noise. So when I'm working with clients, and both Indigenous and not Indigenous, but particularly in the Indigenous space, we're wading through that noise to identify what's the stuff that we really want to focus on as individuals and as in businesses, and getting people confident and comfortable with their choices. Because I think whether it's community, whether it's Facebook, whether you're Indigenous or otherwise, when you're in business, there's so much pressure. There is the opportunity to feel pressure about what we should be and what our community should look like and the number of people we should have in it and how we should engage, that there is this pressure. And so many people tend to reject or repel against that because it just feels very much, it feels too much. Whereas if we have this position like you have, is I'm just creating something that I love. I'm actually creating a space that I want to be in. And if people come and join me, then that's going to be awesome. And so rather than focusing on this number and being comfortable about having a number and comparing our numbers to other people, it's actually about comparing our community to what our intention and our desire is. And I think when we talk about communities and building a community, we have to remember that we're building it for us, that we are building it for how we want to operate and how we want to show up. And it doesn't matter whether the number is 10 or 1,000. If you have 10 people in your community who, purchase everything that you offer, who are there every second of every day to support you and build you and promote you and share your stuff to the world, that could be as powerful as 1,000 people who do nothing. And so I think we forget that. We get so caught up in the numbers sometimes that we use numbers as a metric for success because, of course, we like numbers and we need to measure something. But really, I'm about looking at what the impact, and I look at the impact that your groups have on your members and their surrounding audiences. And it's about the impact you're creating. The number is amazing. I couldn't tell you how many people are in your groups, and to me, it doesn't matter. I could come into your groups and there'd be 10 people, and I know that it would be powerful because we're creating impact through them. It's not just about the volume of people.
It's amazing, isn't it? And, Kate Toon once, I was listening to her in a Clubhouse. I must say I haven't been on that app. Is it still there? In quite some time. But I did love it so much. I must definitely get back on. But I was listening to Kate Toon talk in a Clubhouse room once. And she said, and I've used it so many times since then. She said, I'd rather have 100 followers that were engaged with me. Oh, no, that wasn't. Sorry, let me get it right. It was something to do with, it was all around, email signups, etc. I'd rather have 100 people. Oh, there you go. I'd rather have 100 people on my email list because I know that they wanted to know from me and hear what I've got to offer, etc., than 1,000 people following me on socials who may not ever see my posts, may not ever get engaged with what I'm doing. So building that up. So that's something we haven't even touched on. We can leave that for another day, though, which is about community around email, and not even just live in person on Facebook, but, when that pops into your inbox, are you receiving it and going, yes, I'm part of that community? That's the one as well.
And I think, and it's an interesting conversation about what is community. Like I know there was a period of time, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where it was all about building a community. Like that was, everybody's Facebook group or everybody's landing pages. When you bought my program, you'll join a community. When you buy this thing, you'll join a community. And it's kind of like, but I'm already in a community. Like it's that kind of multiplication of communities, isn't it? Is that how, if you want people to be really engaged, it's actually about saying, you know what, you can be in every community that you want. I don't mind, but be mindful about what you're engaging and how you're engaging within those communities. And I think so, even as a marketing position for me, talking about joining a community, I say when I talk about the workshops in our business owners mastermind, I say you're going to be around people, like-minded business people. I'm not talking about specifically them, but they may not be your people, but they're like you and they have a similar aspiration, a similar process, and they're on a similar journey to you. You may never like the person. They may not be in your community. So I don't want to force people to be with other business owners that they don't necessarily resonate with, because I have such a broad range of, I've got everything from product and mechanical engineers at one end through to healers and artists at the other end. And so we have such a broad spectrum of people. They're not all going to be in one community. And I think that's where, for me, it's about getting people to understand what their people are and who their community is, and then building that for them, rather than saying my community is the space to play in. If that makes sense?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to give one little example. So I'm in the Keep community, for example, which is our CRM. So it's Infusionsoft. Yep. So we've not been playing in that space for a long time. And I have to be honest, it's not been a good time, our short time. But, I joined the Facebook group because I thought, okay, I'm struggling with this a bit. We've spent many, many, many thousands in paying to get it all set up and operating well. And it never really has operated super well for us. Mm-hmm. And now they've just done this massive update, which is causing us some major grief. And it just seems to be an endless debacle. Every time I jump into that community, oh my word, there's angry people. Like literally every post will be angry people. But that I'm super impressed with. And it's not all their fault either. There's a whole lot of Yahoo stuff going on in the background and all kinds of problems. But what has impressed me with that community is that they have their admins who are obviously, keep whatever, what am I trying to say, employees, etc. They just jump in on everything and let people know we're doing our best here. We're sorry that hasn't happened. I'll send you a private message about that, etc., etc., etc.
Wow.
So they're not letting all the carry on go on. And they're also not shutting people down. They're not taking away those posts. They're not saying, we're only going to show you the pretty flowers. And they're actually responding. And I think, good on you.
So and that's so real. And that's so rare, isn't it, to have such a group who's embracing the negative feedback.
And the apologizing. I just love that. So what feels amazing for me and what keeps me going with it, even though so often I just want to throw my hands up and go, I'm really struggling with this platform, is actually going, you know what? This is good on you guys. You've impressed me as community leaders pretty much.
Yeah.
So now we stay on and we struggle through it. But I keep sitting back and feeling, rather than feeling annoyed 100% of the time, that's actually reduced because I'm feeling impressed quite a bit of the time too, purely by their customer service, really.
And I love that. What a great example. And I haven't heard an example like that, because normally, and you and I have seen this in some of the groups we're in, if somebody puts a comment that doesn't align with the expectations of the owner of the community, it's either deleted, it's shut down, and it's taken offline, and it's kind of put into that kind of isolation chamber, never to be seen again, because we don't want to be public about those things. But I think that idea of being okay with, we've screwed up and I made a mistake and this is what happened and it's okay, but it's what you do after. And we talk about that with Google reviews, haven't we? We've talked that previously, I think, or maybe you and I offline, about you look at Google reviews as a form of community. People go to the Google reviews to see. And I'm always impressed at people who don't get a high rating or a 3 or a 4, and the person's come in and actually provided a response and said, okay, thanks very much for that. This is why it's happened. This is what's happened. And let people know publicly what went well and what didn't go well, so that you're actually showing a response. You're actually showing that they're listening and they're watching what you're saying and they care about what you say. And that's what I'm more interested in. I don't need 25 5-star responses, 5-star reviews, because often only people who want 5 stars are the only people who review, right? Because if I've had such a terrible time, I don't even want to go onto the site to put the review in unless it's so bad. I'm like, I'm going to give you 0 stars, but that's very rare. You tend to only report if you're happy. So if they're responding to that feedback in such a positive way, it shows that they're engaged and they care about the community. And I love that.
That's an interesting one. I just I was teaching a workshop the other day, or speaking at this thing, and I said in the comments, let me know, how often do you go and leave a review? And this one person said, only ever when I'm furious. Like, wow, that's an interesting first response, isn't it? To be with your service. I would usually try and approach the business rather than, boom, I'm on Google reviews, boom, I'm on Facebook reviews. That seemed
I know.
So I put a challenge out to them all, which was to go out there today and do 2 reviews that are positive, sharing something really positive, because we don't do it enough.
No,
and
we don't.
That could maybe be a challenge out to everyone listening today, is to go out and share some reviews, share some good words, and, you know, and what's the word? Contribute to the community of reviews about that business.
I love that. I think that's a really great challenge. Anyone watching today, whether it's on Facebook, Google review, put a post, send it to a private testimonial to someone who who's changed your world or is impacting what you're doing. I think that would be a great idea. Or even just tell someone that if you're doing in real life, in person somewhere, and someone that gives you amazing service, tell the person who delivers your coffee how great they're doing, because often we don't do that. Even I do that. I say hello to everyone and they look at me and go, really, you're talking to me? I remember that. I'm going to finish. This is my feedback conversation. Is I remember being on a plane flying from New York to Los Angeles a couple of years ago when we could go overseas, and it was easy, and I remember having a conversation with the steward saying, I said to them, hey, how's your day been? And they looked at me and went, are you talking to me? And I was like, yeah. And they said, no one has ever asked me how my day is on a flight. And I was like, are you kidding me? I ask every flight attendant, I'm like, hey, how's your day been? Is it a busy day? Have you feeling good? And they look at they said, no one has ever asked them how their day is going when they've been serving their coffee. And I was like, why? That just seems so mean. And he's like, yeah, you've totally made my day because I just asked how their day is. And then I actually took like 3 minutes of my 5-hour flight to have a conversation. And so sometimes unexpected, that level of connection, and that's community to me. That's what community is about. It's sharing the human experience. I feel like it's engaging with people in a one-on-one conversation. This, to me, we have this great Friday community between us and our amazing team supporting us. This is our Friday community, but it's not our only community. So I think that's why I'm really excited when we talk next week about community rules and how Facebook is managing our engagement with our communities online, because I think there's a lot of conversation that we can have around how we manage our communities online to, and the struggles that some people have, like as you've had, in terms of being able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And we'll also talk about, email marketing, community rules, etc., and just rules in general and how we're interacting within those spaces. So
definitely,
Jenni, I'm looking forward to that. But I think that was good and really important that we put that in today and chatted about community in general before we talk about the rules.
Completely agree. Because I'd like people to think about it the next week. If you're listening to this and you're going to join us next week, which we hope you will, but think about some of the communities you're in, some of the rules that you've kind of butted heads with. And we'd love to know about those either in private messenger or on chat through our socials to let us know for next week. If there's any questions you want us to answer about the rules of engagement, let us know beforehand and we'll see if we can do that next week. Beautiful. So how can people get hold of you, Kylie, if they want to share something with you in the next week?
Easiest way to find me is online at hellomedia.team, because of course there's the links to Facebook groups and all kinds of different places that you can connect with me on Instagram, etc. And what about you, Jenni? How can people connect with you?
So easiest way to find me, when my name is Elephant in the Room Consulting, I've made it easy at Elephant in the Room AU. That will bring up LinkedIn. That'll bring up LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, all under the same at Elephant in the Room AU. Or you can go to our website. The link's on our Facebook page for that, and you can connect with us on all the socials and by email or through our website.
Beautiful, Jenni. Well, so wonderful to spend my Friday.
And you too.
Again, thank you.
Have an amazing day.
For listening. You have an amazing day too, and a great weekend, and look forward to seeing you next Friday for Rules.
Sounds amazing. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for listening or watching if you're watching us on YouTube.
Wonderful. Thanks.